Today, we are going to be discussing smart flooring choices for energy efficient radiant heating. That's a mouthful, but we're going to be going over heating different products in different ways. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Ask a Question area here. And we um, did have a Q&A section here, but it disappeared, so bear with me again. There we go. I've got it back open and we'll be glad to assist you. So today we're going to be talking about the benefits of flooring types, the compatible systems for those flooring types, some tips on installing them correctly, and then operating them in an energy efficient manner. Now, tile flooring is historically what's always been heated because it's naturally cold. It feels cold. And a lot of the business that we do is in bathrooms, and people don't want their feet to be cold. So it's easy to clean. It's ideal for high traffic areas like bathrooms and kitchen. But the thing about it is it feels cold. The good thing about it is you can heat it and it doesn't really have a high temperature limit. Like you can turn that heat up very high and it won't damage the tile because it's a very sturdy surface. So those things go together with that tile. Being cold, you can heat it up and you can heat it up well. So what kind of floor heating is compatible with tile? And that would be our temp zone embedded systems. Now, if you've ever been on our website, you'll see that there are some systems that are embedded and some that are floating. Well, what we're going to be talking about today is mostly floating, but if we do, mostly embedded. But if we do talk about floating, we will definitely call that out. So when you see the word embedded, like on your screen right now, that means that this gets put in a bed of thinset or self-leveling cement. It has to be done that way. It's part of the instruction manual. It's a UL listed product and it has to be installed that way. And it's also complies with the electrical code if you do that. I just had a question the other day, is the system waterproof? And yes, it is waterproof because it has to be waterproof if it's going in self-leveling and thinset because there's a lot of water in both of those. So the product is naturally waterproof unless you cut into it during your installation. So this product is available in a flex roll, which has the mesh that you can cut and turn. It also comes in the cable, the ruler cable, and easy mats and custom mats. Now, the cable can actually be used in accordance or in conjunction with an anti-fracture membrane too. So those are the good things about cable. Cable is usually the least expensive because you can use it with just the strips, or you can use it by using a membrane. So this product is wet location listed. It can be used in showers and that type of area. It's not to be put in walls. Electric floor heating products are not allowed by the National Electric Code to be put in walls. So this is definitely can go on your floor. It can go on your bathroom floor. It can go on your mudroom floor. It can go in your shower. It is wet location listed. So let's talk about installing the product with tile flooring. Temp zone with tile requires an embedded installation. Once again, there's that word embedded. That can be done with thinset or self-leveling cement. And you want to have about 3/8 to a half an inch of that layer because that's going to help spread the heat out. And that's going to be called your heat bank. And that's going to, so you don't feel just strips of warmth and strips of cold. That's what spreads out the heat and makes it heat evenly. So you'll see most of our installation plans show the wire spaced 3 inches apart. The reason why it is spaced 3 inches apart is because the electricity or the heat usually travels about a half an inch or 1.5 inches from each side of that cable. So if you put a cable here and put a cable here, this heat will transfer 1.5 inches and this heat will transfer 1.5 inches. And that's what gives you the nice even heating across a tile floor. So the temp zone system is attached to the subfloor, usually with hot glue. Or if you're using a mesh system, you can put staples through the mesh. You never ever put staples over the cable. If you staple over the cable, you will damage it. There's no way around it. We talk to people all the time who make that mistake, so please don't do that. If you use staples, put the staples in the mesh. and put the cable side down, because that way when you staple the mesh, it will hold the cables down also. So it's very, very important to get that layering correct. So you want to hold that down, and then you can also use fixing strips if you're just manually routing the cable back and forth. And the thin set or self-leveling cement goes next before the tile can be installed. There are two different kinds of installations with tile. There's a single step and a two-step. The single step is where you put the heating product down on the wood subfloor, and then you put tile over you put the thin set over the top of it and set the tile into it. That's the one step, and you go one tile at a time. The problem with the single step installation installation method is it's very difficult to eliminate lippage, and lippage is when you have a height difference between your tiles. So unless you've done this installation dozens and dozens of times, you're probably going to want to do it the easier way, and that's the two-step method, where you take the heating product, attach it to the subfloor, cover it with a 1/4-inch thick skim coat of thin set, and then come back the next day once the thin set is firmed up and start tiling on top of that, eventually ending up with 3/8 to an inch, 1/2 inch of thin set layer to give you that nice spread of heat. So to operate it, you'll be using one of our thermostats. The thermostats have GFCI protection built into them, so you don't need to get a GFCI circuit breaker. And the good thing about tile is you can set it up to a very high temperature. You can set it up to 100 or 101 if you wanted to, because the tile's not going to be damaged by temperature. So you don't really have to worry about that. So that's why if you are going to be doing a 3-season room or something like that, that you need to get a lot of heat into, it's better to use tile because it's not throttled down. You don't have a maximum temperature that you have to set your thermostat for and not let it go above that temperature. So that tile, you can heat it up real nice and warm, and that'll help deliver more heat into a space that you're looking to heat, like a 3-season room. It's very, very important to keep in mind you can change the temperature as you go throughout the year. You can also use setback temperatures, which means you operate it at a higher temperature when someone's home, and then you operate it at a lower temperature when there's no one home and overnight when no one's walking on the floors. So that programmability is called a setback. You can take it from 84 and set it down to 70. That's your setback. And then you can run it from at 70 degrees from midnight until 6, and then you run it back up to 84 at 6 o'clock, while you're in the bathroom or getting ready for work. And then it can go back down again while you're away from work, and then come back up when you get home. So that's the programmability, and that's what a setback is. That allows you to reduce the temperature, which allows you to reduce your operational costs by doing that way. So it's very, very important, though, that you use a floor sensor and that the floor sensor is spaced and put in correctly. So if we take a look at this layer here, you can see that the floor sensor is placed into an open loop. Notice how it's not running over the heating wire, but it's into an open loop 6 or 8 inches into that loop. You don't have to run it all the way out into the middle of the floor. You just have to get it about 6 inches into a space that has wire on each side of it without crossing over the heating wire. That's very, very important, because if you get this sensor and it touches the wire, your system will never work correctly because it'll short cycle. The temperature on the wire raises very quickly and drops very quickly, and the temperature of the thin set between the wires doesn't raise and lower so rapidly. So if you put it here on the wire, it'll go from 70 to 90 almost instantaneously within a few seconds, and it'll shut off because it goes, oh, that's too warm. That's why it's so important to place this correctly, and you don't need to run it all the way out into the middle of the floor. So that's how you're going to control your tile flooring with your thermostat and your floor sensor, and that's how you're going to be able to set it back to be in an economy running period when no one is there to walk on the floor. So let's talk about LVT. LVT is very popular. We get questions about LVT all the time. We have meetings with customers about LVT all the time. It's a very, very popular product. With that, there's just some things that you need to remember when you're putting them in. It's very, very popular, so you're going to be getting these questions. It's easy to install, comes in a whole bunch of designs. It can look very, very interesting, very, very dramatic, however you want it to look. And the thing is, with LVT and the method that we install it in, if you live with the LVT for 5 years, you go, you know what, I want to change it. You just lift up the LVT and put new LVT down. It's very, very easy to, if you change your mind. Like with tile, not so much. You have to break the tile up. And then when you break the tile up, maybe you might damage the wire when you're doing so. But if you're ready to lift your LVT up and use a different color or different style, you just lift it up, put the new down on the heated subfloor that you make, and you're ready to go. It's water resistant. Most of the time it is water resistant. It's very, very durable, but it does have a maximum temperature that you can raise it to. So you'd have to ask your manufacturer what temperature that is. Sometimes it's 82, sometimes it's 80, sometimes it's 84, which means you can't heat the floor beyond that temperature. So that's why LVT sometimes is not a really good choice for a 3-season room, because it's throttled back. You can't get it to heat like tile. Tile you could set to 100 if you wanted it to be 100. This you can't set it any higher than 82 or 84, whatever the manufacturer says. So that's one of the things with LVT, and people get great results. They love the floors. You just need to make sure that you comply with the requirements of the LVT manufacturer. Some of them don't want you doing setback temperatures, and that's just all going to be stuff that you're going to be talking to your supplier about. Do you allow setback temperatures? What's your maximum temperature allowed? Is radiant heat okay? So those are some very simple questions, and you'll usually get yes, 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 and then they'll give you a temperature. That's what you want to keep in mind. So let's talk about compatible systems with LVT. Once again, it's the same product. Our temp zone heating, our temp zone flex rolls, which you can see there pictured, covered with self-leveling. And that's what is required, and a couple reasons why it's required. The LVT usually it requires embedded. If you look in the installation manual, it'll say embedded heat at least 1/2 inch away from the heater, between the heat and the flooring. And that's one thing that we're going to accomplish using this self-leveling, is because we're going to put a 1/2 inch of self-leveling there, and that's going to get you the distance required away from the heating cable. Also, it's going to give you the flatness requirement that many LVT systems have. They will say it can't go over this temperature, and it has to be separated by so much distance, and it must be very flat. So this is going to be exactly what you need for an LVT installation. The reason why you wouldn't put LVT directly on the heating cable, well, first of all, this particular product you can't. It has to be embedded, first of all. But if you were trying to use that with our Environ system, you wouldn't want to do that either, because LVT has a propensity to mold to whatever's below it. That's called drape. So the LVT will settle over time. And if you have heating wires, it'll start to settle over those heating wires, and you'll see little dents in the wire in a year, or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on how thick that is. So that drape is another reason why you have to have a very flat floor below it. So that's what the self-leveling gives you. It meets all those criteria, and it allows you to comply with the warranty of your system. So very, very important to keep those things in mind and remember those questions to ask when you're in the shopping mode for the LVT. So just like tile, LVT is installed over the temp zone, like we talked about. This method creates a heated subfloor, like I already mentioned. And that heated subfloor, you can take the LVT off and put different LVT on. Or, you know what, if you decide, hey, you know what, I want to put tile on here, you would just back butter the tile and put the thin set on top of the self-leveling, and you would then start setting your tile. So you could create a brand new tile floor if you'd like to. But you need to make sure that the cement is at the proper moisture content level and cured before you start putting the product over the top of it. And also another very, very important thing is to check the R value rating of the plank itself, because we want to have an R value of less, or an R value of 1 or less. So if we take a look at this cross section here, you can see the plywood subfloor. The plywood subfloor, when you're using self-leveling cement, 9 times out of 10, the self-leveling a company will say this must be used with primer. So what you would do is you would, on top of your plywood subfloor, you would apply the primer. Then you would lay the temp zone flex roll, adhere it to that surface, then cover it with self-leveling cement. If you don't attach your temp zone very, very well to the subfloor, it will float. Self-leveling is very dense. So it will float. You have to look out for that. And very, very important that you keep that in mind. So very important, make sure that the cables are facing down and that you're doing that. We got a question from Rick. Let me see. Do you require cork underlayment under the heat mat when installing LVP? Well, you don't use cork with self-leveling. You would use our thermal sheet. Thermal sheet is a synthetic cork that doesn't expand when it gets wet. So you would not use cork underlayment with self-leveling. You would use thermal sheet because it will not expand and pop off the floor. We have seen that with cork. So when you're mixing cork and LVT, it's a bad idea because of the self-leveling. So whenever you're doing that, you want to use the self-leveling along with thermal sheet. So thank you, Rick. That's a very good question. I appreciate that. So check with the manufacturer, see what the R value of your product is, and then that will help you get a very efficient system. If you buy an LVT plank that's real thick, has a pre-attached backing, and has an R value of 3, that floor isn't going to get very warm because the heat's going to be trapped underneath. You need to let it pass through, and that's where the R value of 1 or less is required. So as we talked about, most LVT will have a temperature limit for the flooring. That is stated by the manufacturer of the flooring. So they're going to say maximum temperature of 82 or maximum temperature of 84, whatever it is. That's why you're going to use this thermostat with a floor sensor, because the sensor is actually put right into the floor and it will control the temperature of that floor. So that's why the floor sensor is so important and why it's so important to put it in correctly and to get it in there correctly. Now this limit, if it says 82, you can just set your maximum temperature during your warming period to whatever that number is. We also mentioned check for any setback restrictions for the LVT. Does the LVT manufacturer say, yeah, you can set it for 84 and then set it to 70? That's fine. But some of them will say, no, you can only deviate from the temperature 1 or 2 degrees per day because they don't want it expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. So that's where that setback can have something to do with that. So always check and see if setback is allowed or not. If it's not allowed, it's not the end of the world. So let's talk about nailed down, glued down wood flooring. And we had a question from Jerry. Will hardwood floors really work with electric underfloor heat? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. I've installed one myself at a friend of mine's house, and they have a living room that's 2 stories high. That room was notoriously cold at the floor, and all the heat was up in the second floor. It was up in the ceiling. And that room was always cold. So what we did is we put a hardwood floor in there, 3/4 inch oak, and we put the electric heating system under that. We put it in the subfloor, right on top of the existing wood subfloor. And we put sleepers in and ran the cable back and forth between the sleepers. And now that floor is warm. The people that live there, their feet are always warm, and they are always warm because the heat is coming from the floor. It's not all getting trapped up at the ceiling, 2 stories high. So it's very, very good. I can't say enough positive stuff about it, especially if you have very high ceilings. So they can also last a long, long time. They can be installed glued down or nailed down or a combination of both, because the floor that we did, you can only nail it down for so far, and then you actually have to glue it to something. And that's why you use self-leveling to make it a nice flat installation. We have a video that shows how this is done, the job that I did. So it's a great installation. it feels great, and it can help them and make them look better and last longer. Because if you have no setback allowed, which means you set it to 82 and leave it there, you don't have any expansion and contraction over the winter. It just stays at 82 or 84, and it doesn't expand or contract. It just stays there. So the floor doesn't do any of that. It just stays in situ, as they say, and it will be a nice heated floor that won't gap or separate. Then at the beginning of the year, you have to commission it. You have to start the heat. You just don't take it from 70 to 84. You take it if they allow 3 degrees or 2 degrees of deviation per day. You'd set it to 72 one day, then 74 the next day, 76 the next day, 78, 80, 82 over the days. And once you ramp up, then you will leave it there all winter. Then at the end of the year, you go from 82 to 80. Next day, 80 to 78. The next day, 78 to 76, and so on and so on. So you bring it up slowly, keep it there, and then bring it down slowly at the end of the year. So let's take a look. Here's the job that we did. That's my foot, a couple of my feet there in that picture. And you can see we have sleepers installed on the subfloor, and we ran the heating cables at 3-inch spacing between those sleepers. The sleepers are spaced 8 inches apart on center, and that's what allows you to nail the flooring down into the subfloor. The manufacturer of that subflooring or of your flooring itself will say the nail rate is 8 inches, or the nail rate is 12 inches, or then whatever it is. That's how close the nails have to be to hold it down. So if they say 8 inches on center, then that's exactly what you see here with this design. And we will actually do an installation and design for you at no charge, so we make sure that we get the right amount of cable installed in that floor. So the cable works best for this. And what you do then is you would take this, once the cable's all installed, fill it up with self-leveling until it reaches the exact height of the furring strips here. And that gives you a nice flat floor all the way across. And that would be perfect because the heat from the subfloor translates right into or travels into the flooring itself. That's why you need to make sure it's the same height. If you have a 1/2 inch space gap between that wood, that air is going to act like an insulator, and the wood's not going to get as warm because it's not making contact with the heated subfloor. So if you're doing a glued down installation, it would be just like we showed in the other pictures. It would be simply you install it and then cover the whole thing with 3/8 to a 1/2 inch of self-leveling. Here you put the self-leveling between the sleepers. So let's take a look at this installation here. The floor heating system will need to be embedded just like we talked about. Glued down flooring will typically go right over the cured and dried self-leveling. And for any nailed down flooring, wooden sleepers should be used. So if we take a look here, we can see at the bottom, you can see here where the sleepers are. When you're dealing with the wood subfloors, it's all and self-leveling, you always have to put the primer on here before you pour primer onto it. Now, people will ask, what primer do I use? You use the primer that is specified on the self-leveling bag. They'll tell you what that is. And on that bag, it'll also tell you usually what this the cure time is, 7 days, 14 days, 28 days, and what the allowable moisture content is. Those are the rules of that. You need to make sure it's dried. You need to make sure it is cured, and then you can start putting your wood flooring over that. So let's take a look at the control for this particular setup, and that is a thermostat that is not a programmable. So it's kind of interesting. The most expensive floors use the least expensive thermostats, because if you have a really expensive wood floor, most of the time you're not going to be allowed to do setbacks, which means you're going to set it and forget it, leave it there all winter, and then turn it off in the spring and summer. So this programmable or non-programmable thermostat, you simply use the arrows to set it whatever temperature you want it, and it will stay at that temperature the entire winter until you decide to change it. But this thermostat also uses a floor sensor. So you'll need to install that floor sensor so it can keep you and the floor at the same temperature. And make sure that you ask your wood flooring manufacturer what the maximum temperature limit is for their flooring, and they will tell you what that is. So here we can see the time displayed. There's a GFCI test button and an on-off reset button over here, and it will display the current floor temperature right here in the window. So we talk about floating wood flooring. This is usually engineered wood. And this is another floor that we did locally where we installed a floating engineered floor over the top. And a laminate is also the same, very, very similar. These two particular jobs, notice the word engineered wood and laminate, not LVT, but laminate. You can use this product with those, and that is our Environ floating system, which means the Environ system is best suited for floating floors with a sturdy structure such as laminate or engineered wood. It can also be used with carpeting in the US. And that, if you're doing carpeting, you would put the carpet pad on the subfloor, you'd put the Environ system over the top floating, and then you would put the carpet that gets stretched in over the top of that. So Environ is a foil-backed mat that requires no adhesion or embedding. You never glue it to anything, and you never glue anything to it. It floats under that floor. And that makes it the quickest, fastest, easiest installation possible. So Environ's never glued down, just like we talked about that. The underlayment should be used to cushion the heating elements against a hard subfloor beneath. You would never install this between wood flooring and a wood subfloor without padding. You have to have a pad underneath it. And the reason why we suggest a 1/4-inch pad or a 6 millimeter pad is because the lead, the non-heating lead that runs from the thermostat down the wall across the floor to the heating portion, that's a 1/4-inch thick. So you want to make sure that your underlayment is a 1/4 inch thick so the hard wood doesn't teeter-totter over the top of it. You want it recessed so it doesn't teeter-totter, it stays there. So you want a 6 millimeter or 1/4-inch pad under that product because you can never have it between two hard surfaces. And the rules with laminate and your engineered floor are the same thing when it comes to R value. You want an R value of 1 or less for those two products. And we don't really care how thick it is as long as the R value is 1 or less. So if we're doing a floating flooring operation, there's very often a temperature limit that you can't exceed. So make sure you find out what that is. Your carpet manufacturer will say what that is, or your engineered wood or your laminate will say it must be below this amount. And the thermostat will keep it there because the sensor, once again, is installed in the floor, exactly where it needs to be to regulate the temperature. So some key takeaways from this. These are the things we want you to remember. These are the important things to take away is always check with the flooring manufacturer for their radiant floor heating requirements. Verify the temperature limits, the setback restrictions, especially for non-tile flooring. Get a thermostat that will be compatible with the heating needs of the space and the flooring material. Remember, if you can't do setbacks, you don't need a programmable thermostat. If you can do setbacks, we have touchscreen thermostats, which are very easy to use, and they also come in a Wi-Fi version. So you can use that Wi-Fi control from your phone to control the temperature of your floor. The Wi-Fi thermostats are also compatible with Alexa and with Google Home. So that's a question that we often get. They are not compatible with Apple HomeKit, but they are with Alexa and with Google. So that way you can just say, hey, Alexa, turn up the temperature of my floor to 84, and it will do that for you. So do we have any questions here? I've got Olivia that's helping run this today. And Olivia, do we have any questions on Facebook? Because I can't see that. And you're muted. If you're talking to me, I can't hear you.
Sorry, Scott, none from
That's
Facebook.
all right. So nothing there?
Nothing there right now.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about next month's webinar. The next month's webinar is how to install pro exclusive ruler cable heating with tile and LVT. So that's going to be a little more in depth when it comes to LVT. So we'll answer more questions there. And you can also join us, like that's me from a few years ago. Guess I could have dressed a little better that day, but I didn't know we were going to do a photo shoot or I was going to do some pictures during my training session. So anyway, you don't have to sit in the room with us like we're showing there, like we've done a lot. You can just simply join us on the internet. And that's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 4 p.m. And that's all Central Time. So check us out. We talk about a bunch of different stuff. And the good thing about those is you can pretty much ask, if we're talking about something, you don't have to ask the questions about that. You can ask it about anything you want to. So we're here Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 4 p.m. So check out our October promotion. That's this month. And I don't see any pumpkins or ghosts or anything like that, but I do see towel warmers. So we do have a 25% deal on select Warmly Yours towel warmers. So visit our website to learn all about our ongoing promotions. They're there. And the good thing about the internet, it's on 24/7. So you can always check that out. And we do value your feedback. You're going to receive an email asking for your feedback on this webinar. So let us know what you think. And also, if we're not talking about something that you're interested in, let us know what you're interested in, because I'd much rather sit here and talk to people who are interested in about a specific topic. So if you have something you'd like to suggest, please do so, and we'll try to knock it out for you. So unless we have any further questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today. So I'd like to thank Olivia for helping us in the background. She does a great job when it comes to these webinars, and she's the one that you'll probably be hearing from. So thanks again, Olivia. You can also email us if you have any questions at info@warmlyyours.com. And our toll-free number is 800-875-5285. So you can get a hold of us whenever you want to. So thanks for watching, everybody. Stay warm, be radiant, and be connected, not necessarily in that order. Have a great day. Thanks again. Bye, everybody.